This video is going to be about chapter 1 lesson 6, and that's going to be solve proportional relationships. We briefly talked about proportional relationships earlier in the chapter. I believe in lesson 1 we ended with proportions and solving proportions. So in that video I told you to remember how to do that because we'll be coming back to it, and basically this is it. We're going to be dealing with proportions again. The objective, students will be able to use proportions to solve problems. The essential question for chapter 1 is how can you show that two objects are proportional? And then lesson 6 is how do you solve a proportion? Now, before we get started, we need to go over our vocabulary, which is proportion. These two things right here are examples of proportions. Proportions are basically two rates or ratios, which can be represented as fractions, and they're going to be equal to each other. So you can see you have one fraction is equal to the other, and one fraction is equal to the other. In order to work with proportions and solving proportions, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the cross product, which is something that you guys might know as cross multiply. So what that means is, since this is a proportion, since both sides are equal, if you use a cross product or if you cross multiply, right here, 3 times 4, that gives us 24. And in order for it to be proportion, it must be equal on both sides. So if I also do this side, cross multiply, 6 times 4, you're going to realize it still also gives me 24. So we're going to be using this concept, cross product or cross multiply, in order to solve proportions. So right here, in this proportion, when we're solving it, we're usually going to have an unknown value. Right here, it's x. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply first. After you set up your proportion, we cross multiply. That's going to be 8 times x, which just gives you 8x. And you're going to multiply the other side. 1 times 64, which gives us 64. And remember that both sides of a proportion must be equal to each other. So we have the equation, ax is equal to 64. Now all you have to do is whatever number is with your variable, in this situation the x, you're going to divide that number on both sides. Because whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you must do on the other side. So basically the 8's cancel out and you're left with x is equal to 64 divided by 8. That's going to be equal to 8. That's just an example of what we're going to be doing this whole lesson. If you didn't understand it now, don't worry. We'll continue in the following videos. So that's a breakdown of the intro and the vocabulary.